ready now?
No, that's Harrison, Danny.
Okay. I would like to bear my testimony and express my gratitude to the Savior for all that He's done for us. I think little do we realize how important His message on earth was for us, and how much we love Him. We are grateful to Him for this service, and for all the leaders we have in the church now, for the general authorities, for President Hinckley and his devotion, thinking of man of his age, 93 I believe, and still striving to serve the Lord. I see where he dedicated land in Sacramento, California yesterday for the building of a temple, and expressing the needs of the people there and their devotion. And we were fortunate in making a visit to Israel, and we walked some of the places that our Savior has walked. We sat on a boat and sang songs as we crossed the Sea of Galilee. We waded through the Hezekiah's tunnel in water nearly a quarter mile long and nearly a knee deep in places. We rode the tram up to the, now I can't think of the name of that peak down by the Dead Sea. There's a place where the Israelites held out for something like a year before they got the slaves to build a ramp up to them, and then those that survived, most of them committed suicide, as I recall, and then a few hid out and survived. Let's see, we witnessed the Spirit in the grave where supposedly the Savior was buried, where they rolled away the stone and found that he was absent.
Honey.
What was that called?
Garden of Gethsemane.
Garden of Gethsemane. Yeah, and we
we
were in Israel for 2 weeks, and let's see, visited sacred places every day. It was an ongoing thing. I should have my notes here. I waded in the Dead Sea, and others of our party put on swimsuits and floated in that heavy salt water.
I waded in it too. That was really interesting.
And anyway, it was lots of salt water, more so than Great Salt Lake, because they just float, and of course they come out muddy because it was a dirty lake. And it used to be one sea, but at the time now, the sea has gone down so far with the Israelites, people of Israel, harvesting the salt and making different minerals out of what's there. And there's an island came up in the middle now, so the Dead Sea is basically separated into 2 seas. I think people express their testimony by how they serve. We have so many people in the church that are so willing to serve. When people go into a foreign country, live under primitive conditions, and serve for a year, 2 years, with the quality of missionaries we have nowadays, that they go out there to serve, not to just kill time to make Mother and Dad happy, which we experienced a lot of in the past. Let's see, people work in the temples, and they work in there, and for the most part, I think they're living off of savings. I guess if they needed it, the church would subsidize their living, but I don't know. But they serve for years and years in temples. Well, a temple colony is usually about 7 years, like a stake president and
they don't subsidize stake presidents.
And President BYU and such places as that. But basically now that's donated labor, and Mother has a pile of blankets in the back room there now that she's going to give a humanitarian service. There again, that's a part of a testimony. Though. We know what we are participating in is the true gospel, and hopefully we're doing the things that the Lord would ask us to do if He were here present. I have a brother that's ready to go on his third mission right after the first year. He said, a younger brother that after experiencing charity, some charity worldwide, and visiting China and Japan and Asia and various countries, Russia, why he's got the feeling now, and he said he's going to prepare his papers and go on another mission.
Identify the brother, Dad.
Yeah, that's Myron, and I might add that when he got his mission call and found it was Chicago, he said he was so upset he was not ready to turn down the opportunity to serve. But anyway, he went in faith. Decided if the Lord wants me there, that's where I'll go. When he got there, he found out he was there to serve the Asian people. The Cambodians were there, and there were French people there. He mixed with a lot of different cultures, and he said if he was to pick his own mission, knowing what was there, that's exactly where he would pick now, because he had such a wonderful time. And then he'd just been released a few months, and the people that replaced him had a serious medical problem at home and needed emergency return home and take care of things. And so they called and asked him if he was willing to come back and complete these other folks' mission for him. And they said, and Myron and Ruth said yes, and they hopped in their car and back they went. And he said it was the most enjoyable thing he'd done in a long time. Well, I think that's the key. People show their testimony by the way they live, by the way they're willing to serve, by so many things in life that we make an example. Lately, the church has been stressing a lot to look out for your neighbor. Don't wait till he asks for help. He won't ask for help when he really needs it. And go offer it. And so I think that's kind of interesting. The last few weeks we get more and more of that. I so much admire President Hinckley. He flies all over the world to dedicate these temples, to dedicate the ground to build them on. And we have a brother in the church, and I can't think of his name right now, that furnishes the airplane and the pilot to get him wherever he wants to go, anytime he wants to go. And that is certainly a gift to the church. Well, I don't know, because I have a lot more to say. I'm grateful to the Lord for the way He has blessed our family. He has made us rich, not with money, but with the things that really count. A valuable family. And this I say in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Hey, Ron.
All right. Just a kind of a quick account of my experience in the Army. I was deferred when I was 19 because my dad had nearly 600 acres of ground, and the government recognized that they need the product of the land to support the people of the nation while our boys were off to war. So I was deferred for 1 year, and then one day the county agent came around, and he was snooping for the Selective Service Department. We didn't know it, but I just happened to be all caught up on the work that day, and I was putting down the mop boards in our home that had never been finished, the trim around the floor. And in just a few weeks, well, here come my draft notice. Greetings from the President. Show up on the 19th of October for your test to see if your health will allow you to be in the Army. And I feel you and see if you are warm, and you're in. Anyway, so I went to Fort Douglas on 19th of October, 1944. Was it 4 or 45? It used to be 45. Anyway, I was at Fort Douglas for basically a week, and then transferred to Camp Walters, Texas for basic training. It was supposed to be a 17-week training course, but that during the Battle of the Bulge in Germany, and they lost so many men that they dropped our training course from 17 weeks down to 13 weeks, gave us a quick furlough home for, I don't remember, a week or 10 days, something like that. And then in my case, about half or 2/3 of the boys went to Europe, the other third went to Asia. So next thing I knew, I was headed for Fort Ord, California. I spent a week, no, I spent a month there, cutting grass with the scissors to keep us busy while I was waiting for ships to haul us overseas and whatnot. We left through Camp, went down through Camp Stoneman, down across the equator with 5,500 troops on board and 700 sailors to man the ship. It was a big ship, the USS General John Pope. And they don't go directly to Philippines. They went down more southerly, down across the equator, zigzagging. About every 15 minutes, they'd zig one way and then zag the other way. And that's so the submarine couldn't spot you, maybe from behind or off to the side, and decide where you'd be in an hour from now, and he could radio ahead and tell another submarine where he could get a nice target. Anyway, so we zigzagged and crossed the equator and went down, and we parked off New Guinea and the New Hebrides for about 3 days, as I recall, and that way we went all the way, all that distance, about 23 days without any kind of an escort. All we had was the guns on the ship to protect us, which was small cannons. Anyway, at one time it was kind of interesting. A shark stuck his top fin out of the water, and oh boy, everybody below deck, and those ACAC guns opened up on that shark, and it was only about 150 yards away from the ship, and shooting at that fin. I didn't know but what that was the fin from a submarine, and if it had been, it had been curtains for the whole batch of us. They had hundreds of lifebuoys on the ship. We could have probably got on if it got sunk. Anyway, after about 5 days, something like that, a large armada of Navy ships showed up. We had destroyers and aircraft carriers and escort ships, and they escorted us up to Manila in the Philippines. That was back across the equator. Another hot ride, but the safer route, I guess. Anyway, just as we approaching, and as we pulled into the bay in Manila, while the little kids come out, something, what was they used to yell? Something Tokyo Joe. Anyway, and the guys found out they could throw money over the side of the ship, and those little kids would dive down 15, 20 feet and go down and get those coins. Well, about the same time, somebody on board ship came down with mumps. And you don't want to transfer 5,000 men out into the field, in the front lines with mumps. So they decided to quarantine us. And we were shipped out to about 10 miles east of Manila and put in a replacement depot. And they were going to hold us there until the mumps subsided. Well, they didn't even ask who had mumps, or they just quarantined us all. And you know, the guys on the front lines, once in a while, they'd get a leave of absence, a little furlough, and they get down to Manila and find out these guys out the base had mumps. So they'd come out there and inquire, who's got mumps? Where can I get the mumps? Because they wouldn't be able to stay away from the front lines. They couldn't be sent back to the front lines. They had the mumps. Anyway, they finally decided there's just a few cases of mumps came down in that quarantine unit of about 10,000 men. Well, 5,600, I guess, is what there was there. And decided to send us out to our units, and they could quarantine us in our units if they wanted to. And so I was assigned to the 33rd Infantry, and they put us out about a mile from the rest of the first line troops that were back. They'd been up fighting the Japanese up around Baguio. And let's see, Baguio, we've got missionary in our ward just serving in Baguio right now. Anyway, that's the summer capital of the Philippines. That's where MacArthur had his summer home. They have a Catholic church up there with artillery holes in it. Anyway, so we were there for about 30 days, and then mumps seemed to be under control, so they put us out with our unit. Well, first day I was assigned to go with the frontline troops back up to harass the Japanese because they'd whittled them down. They had no supply lines to Japan. They were way up in the tops of the mountains, and there was dug way, just high cliffs, and they just carved a road out of the cliffs and to get back up where we knew they were up about 5 miles up country. So we went up one morning we went up the first morning, and they went up about 5 miles, and they watched with their binoculars, and they'd see one once in a while running from here to there, but didn't get any shots off. Anyway, and while up there, I decided I had to go to the bathroom. And I hated to go right with my troops running around me, and I hated to go back down the road a little way, so I stepped through this cut in the mountain, and where we had a tank and whatnot, and I was just being very busy when I heard blink, 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 and it was bullets being fired at me, landing in the leaves right to the side of me. So I decided I didn't need to go to the bathroom that bad anymore, and escaped back through, and then we came back down. The next day we went up, and we got about halfway that far, and there's a big horseshoe bend there, and I was kind of on the tail end of the little patrol. I think we had 2 tanks and a Jeep, an M7 tank. An M7 tank is one with armor around the outside, about, what would you say, 30 inches up, of an 1.5 inch steel plate, and you could stand in there, and riding in there, and anyway, that's called an M7 tank. And these Japanese had set a trap for us. We were supposed to go up and around this point, and then into this great big horseshoe bend. It was up there about a mile of that horseshoe bend, bending to the west, and then back to the north, and then to the east. And if they had waited till we got around there, they would have had us. But some Japanese on the south end got trigger happy and started shooting, and so we took a defensive position and started backing up. We had, I think it was 3 radios in our unit. Let's see, the lieutenant was carrying one, and they shot a bullet hole went right through that radio. Another one was in a tank, and the tank commander, as soon as they were under siege, he dropped the lid on the turret down to about 3 inches so he could just peek out. And by the way, I was on that tank at that time. And as I jumped off just ahead of that. And that tank commander was shot 2 bullets right between the ice. And so he dropped down in, and the other guys in the tank had to shove him out of the way and maneuver that tank up in the mountains, if they didn't maneuver it correctly, they could run that tank over the edge, and they'd roll what seemed like a quarter of a mile to the bottom of the canyon. And on the other side, it was steep. It was so high you couldn't throw a rock up to it. And they were dropping satchel charges down. They were out of grenades, so they had homemade satchel charges, which was bullets, pieces of metal, spent bullets, or anything they could tape together and put a charge in and put a fuse in it and throw it, and just drop it off the cliffs on us. So these satchel charges were coming down on us, and that's when I peeled off of the tank. I jumped off. It was about probably nearly 4 feet from the tank I was riding to the ground. And two guys had jumped off just ahead of me, and they ran down the road, and I'd see just the road was just peppered with bullets marks as they ran down the road. But there's no other place to go, so I jumped off the tank, and as I jumped, I was tripped by another guy trying to get off at the same time I was, because he was behind me, and there was 4 of us on there. And as I kind of tripped, I lived right in front of that tank as a tank going backwards. So we gave a big surge to go backwards, and I rolled. I hit and I rolled sideways into the bar pit just as that tank went by. But the other guy carrying a BAR, which is a Browning automatic rifle, a bigger caliber, and it shoots a lot more bullets faster. He hit in a bad position and bent that BAR double, and it also broke his back. So he was underneath that tank then as it maneuvered back and forth trying to get a shot at those people in the cliffs, firing a tank at a target 100 yards away. And how he ever survived without being run over by that tank, I don't know. But he had a broken back, so I went down around the corner, those bullets peppered at me, and these Japanese had been taught to shoot ahead of a moving target because the bullet takes time to get there, and so there'll be a different position if you use straight at them. Well, a human being is not that fast. A plane is, yes, but apparently that guy was shooting ahead of both of us. The 2 guys ahead of me. Anyway, I went down around the corner, and I was there about 5 minutes, maybe 10, when a guy came from up above. And in fact, it was a lieutenant, and he'd been shot through the leg. His leggings, you could see the bullet hole where it went in his leg, about halfway between his knee and his ankle, but he could still run on it. And I guess it went through flesh and it didn't break a bone. And anyway, he wanted help because this guy under the tank needed help. So I went back up. Me and another guy went back up, and we grabbed that guy by the 2 arms, 2 hands. I said, we told him we can't move you with a stretcher. You shouldn't be moved. And he says, you get me out of here no matter what. Anyway, we grabbed him by the hands and we drug him down the road on his stomach just as fast as we could run. Got him down around the corner. And soon after that, the Jeep that had been up front with the officers in leading the patrol, they came down and their radio had been shot out too. So out of 3 radios that we could have radioed back to base camp for help, they were all shot. And let's see, in that patrol, I think there was 32 or 34 men in the patrol. All but 3 or 4 were wounded in some way. There was 3 or 4 dead, plus this guy with a broken leg, his leg shot through, and a guy with a broken back, and get him back to base camp while they get him in an ambulance. And you never hear what happens. So what happened to them? Whether they got off the hill all safe, whether they went home, whether they died before they got there, you just don't know. Anyway, The next few days, a week or so, we pretty well stayed in our foxhole. We had a peak there. We were guarding a peak. They set up about 15, 20 men to dig their foxhole about 4 feet deep and 3 feet wide, and put your let's see, 3 feet wide, yeah. Anyway, you stretch some limbs over the top of that, and put your poncho, which is raincoat, over the top of that because it rains every little while in the Philippines. And then you take two of you stay in that foxhole for a couple of weeks, and take turns sleeping. And that would be my second or third day on the front line, so I didn't do much sleeping. So this other guy, they had released him from prison. They said, if any of you guys in prison are willing to go fight the war, we'll let you out to go do it. And that's what he was. He'd killed somebody in civilian life, and so I spent the 2 or 3 days in the foxhole with him, and he was glad to sleep while I watched. And he'd get out there, and the fog would roll in, and that little stump that was out there about 50 yards away, all of a sudden that stump seemed like it moved. Because the fog would give you an illusion that it was moving, and you were told if you saw anything move, you could shoot it. Or you had a bunch of grenades in the hole with you, you could toss a grenade out on it. But if you toss a grenade out there, then if there's Japanese creeping up on you, they'll probably see the movement, or they might get you a better position on where you are and throw a grenade in on you. So you didn't shoot or didn't throw a grenade unless you had to. And in that case, we didn't, because I was assured I was seeing illusions. Anyway, another experience was we had the artillery. The artillery downfield, 8 miles down country, basically, and they'd fire a shell in on a prescribed amount of, let's see, I want to call it dynamite, but I didn't know what it's called. And then we'd tell them where it landed, and they'd skip one a little closer and a little closer, and those artillery shells would come in above our foxhole and cut the limbs off the trees, being fired from 8 miles away. Anyway, they were so accurate with those artillery shells, you didn't worry about it. You'd hear them coming, and you could see them going over if you were off to the side. An artillery shell is 3 inches big around and about probably 8 or 10 inches long, as I recall, and they explode when they hit. And so if there's any Japanese around, why, luckily you may get one, but it discourages them from bothering you at night. And so we held that position then for, I can't remember, probably a couple of weeks. And then one day we got the word we're being replaced by I think it was the 123rd Army. I was in the 133. Ours was the 33rd Infantry Battalion. I think it was the 123rd came up to replace us. And so we got in trucks and we rode back down to Dagupan, right on the beach on the Philippines, where we started. Well, the tents were lined up for a quarter of a mile, about 4 wide and a quarter of a mile long. Put the whole battalion there, our 33rd Infantry there, and in tents, and we had about 8 men to the tent. And we'd go out and swim by day and goof around until after a couple of weeks while they got organized, and we started practicing for the invasion of Japan. And we get on these barges and ride out in the ocean a half mile or a mile and get on what they call an LCI, Landing Craft Infantry. And then they were teaching us a few things. And one thing we had to do was climb aboard that LCI, which was about almost 30 feet high. Climb aboard with your pack on, and then we get on a barge to assault the shore as we practiced. That LCI had a ramp on the front of it. They let that down, and the barges would come out of there on wheels, and then they'd hit the water, and then they would float, and with propeller they get you toward the beach. Unless you hit something that stopped you, then you'd have to wade from there on, hold your rifle in the air to keep it from getting wet. Anyway, climbing up that LCI, that was the biggest problem. Because you had a full pack on your back, which is somewhere 30 to 50 pounds, and the ladder hung down, it was a rope ladder hung straight down, but the ship tapered toward the center, so you weren't walking against the sheep. So basically, as you went up there, you were hand over hand, get hold of a rung, and as you put your feet down to try and give yourself a little lift, they would go straight in toward the ship. So it was almost a straight lift, straight up, to just pull yourself up and wait hand over hand. And so we did that for 2 or 3 days. And one night when we came into camp about dusk, a guy by the name of Erickson, I think he was from Vernal, came by. I believe it was him or Douglas Merkley, said, "We just heard a rumor that the United States has got a big bomb, and they tested it on an island, and after they tested it, the island wasn't there anymore." I thought, oh sure, I hope that's right, but and you know, that was supposed to be a big secret, an atomic bomb. But anyway, I think it was within 2 or 3 weeks they dropped that atomic bomb on Japan. But that testing that bomb was done in somewhere in the South Seas, I guess. But it was done by a pilot that lives in Pro. On the, I was going to give you the name of the plane, or Anita or something like. Anyway, I can't remember the exact name of the plane. Anyway, it turned out that it was true. Nobody was supposed to know about that atomic bomb, but it was a fact. And they dropped one on Japan, and we found out afterwards Japan wondered if we only had one. And they weren't about to give up if we only had one atomic bomb, because it had already done its damage. It killed over 30,000 Japanese, and just to blast along, let alone all the people that died afterwards with all the atomic radiation. Anyway, so when they dropped that second one, first one was at Hiroshima, second one was at Nagasaki, as I recall. I visited Hiroshima and saw what it did there. Nagasaki, I never did get down to that. That was another 20 or 30 miles for the GIs after the war that wanted to go down and see what happened to that. But anyway, thereafter, and I don't remember how many days, why they ushered us on the troop ships to go up and invade, occupy Japan. And, you know, the Japanese have been taught to not give up at all costs. You know, suicide deal. But anyway, MacArthur said he wanted unconditional surrender. And that's what they supposedly did. And we landed on the southern tip of Honshu. And we landed off LCIs, just come to think about it, but not before we were turned back a couple of days because there was a typhoon in the area, and it was right in our route to get to Japan. So we went backwards a few days and then back up again, landed southern tip, and we had our rifles all ready. Everybody carried a rifle, but nobody had any ammunition. So it was just a show, you might say. And the Japanese, we marched after we got ashore. once in a while you'd see a little kid duck out from behind a tree or behind a tin shack that what was very little left of a building. And then after a while you see an adult, and after we'd been walking up the road for about an hour, then the adults started showing up, and then little kids come, and the GIs started handing them candy, you know, and it set the flavor. Because of the typhoon, why another infantry outfit landed up near Tokyo sooner than we would have on the southern tip. And anyway, we got on a train. When we got on the train, the Japanese come out and tried to serve us tea. They had tea for everybody. Very few guys took of it. You know, they just gather leaves from the bushes, and a certain kind of bush, and make a tea out of it. But very few partook of it. But there was no shots fired, and they moved us up to, let's see, I don't know how far it was. It seemed like maybe 30, 40, 50, 80 miles, I don't know, up to Atsu. Atsu is the name of the town. They had a Japanese military barracks. That was their area. And that's where we were housed for, well, a month or so. And it was kind of winter because it was cold, and they had stoves in there that you heated with oil. Well, it was supposed to be oil, but the GIs used gasoline. And boy, they'd get hot. Real fire hazard. It kept warm, and I don't think we burned any of them down with as many men as we had. Anyway, wasn't too long after that, maybe a month there at Atsu, till we were, our unit, 33rd Infantry, was so-called deactivated. In other words, sent back to the United States on paper. And what they did is they kept the troops there and disbanded the paperwork of the 33rd Infantry. And I was then transferred to the 538 Motor Ambulance Company. Yeah, and they read on my papers that this guy could type 60 words a minute. So that put me in as company clerk. By the way, before I was sent to the front lines that first day, the sergeant came around and asked me, he says, I understand you can type, do you want to become a company clerk? And I said, well, I'm just here to serve my country. If that's where they want me, that's where I'll go. And he says, well, if that's as bad as you want to become a clerk, why, see if we can find somebody else. And I would have avoided that trip up north. And by the way, when I jumped off that tank, that's when I kind of left that out of my story, didn't I? The burst of shrapnel wounds, shrapnel exploding and whatnot. There was a piece of shrapnel got in the stock of my rifle about 3 inches ahead of my trigger finger on the inside. So that would have had to be when I held my rifle up this way, it hit, and I remembered seeing the flash. And when I brought the rifle down, I didn't notice it, but I got back to the foxhole, I discovered about the size of a dime. And it would have probably hit me in the face if my gun hadn't protected me. And I had a couple of nicks in my hand, one near my wrist, and I don't remember exactly where that was, and one on my leg, and a little piece off my face. I got back to camp, and the first sergeant said, "Did any of you get wounded?" He says, "It'd pay you if you got any wounds at all. We need to treat them." And then also he says, when the war's over, you get, I think it was 21 points toward 120 toward going home. For every year you'd served in the Army, every month you served, and then the extra points for valor or whatever, where you get to home early. And so I said, well, he wanted to give me a Purple Heart outfit. And by the way, I still got a piece of metal in my back, a small fragment. It's on my left ribs in the back there. I didn't know it was there, because you don't inspect your back, you have an itch or something. But when they took x-rays over to American Fork Hospital a couple of years ago, why, there it is, shining away. And that's the only time in my life I could have ever got it. Well, it looks like the copper shell fragment, which is the part of a bullet casing. Anyway, back to where I was. And then that's what I left out inadvertently. Then we got on, when I was assigned to the 538 motor ambulance company, transferred up to the Tokyo area. It was about 20 miles west of Tokyo, out into a village called Itabashiku. And what it was, the Red Cross Center, where a whole bunch of dignitaries had their headquarters, private swimming pool, ideal for a small ambulance company to set up a motor pool area where the mechanics could repair the jeeps and ambulances, and where we could receive phone calls for people in different units around Japan that needed to be hauled into Tokyo to the hospital on sick call. And so I was there the balance of, let's see, I spent a year in Japan, about a year in Japan, until I was the company clerk. You've probably seen the show MASH. I was radar in MASH. Type the payroll, type the daily morning report, and any accident report. I had to go with the lieutenant, and they'd investigate the accident, and I'd type it up and send it to company headquarters, and they'd decide what to do about it. Anyway, one day we got the word that I was going to be able to go home, and it was around September, early September, as I recall. So I was sent to a replacement depot down by the beach where I could get on a ship there in Tokyo. And as I left, Charlie Niederhauser, my best buddy from Logan, in the ambulance company, he said, "Well, I'll beat you there." And I had a lot more points than he had. But, you know, that dang guy, we came straight across and down through San Francisco Bay and in to Camp Stoneman. But he came across up by the Aleutians, and he was released just a few days after me. And he beat me there, and I was on a train and came down and met me at the beach when I came ashore. Because he knew which ship we came on. Let's see, I can't remember the name of the ship. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. So that's about the sum. I spent about a week at Camp Stoneman in California waiting for my paperwork to be processed so I could go home, and got on a bus and slept overnight coming through, and I got home. Let's see. Oh, by the way, when I got to California, I phoned home and told them I was back in the United States, and my mother ran. She ran from the house over to the Krells, which is just short of a quarter of a mile, to inform Dad, Lynn, and Burl Meyer that I was back in the USA. And anyway, eventually I got back to Roosevelt. I arrived at Roosevelt on a Friday. On Saturday, for some reason, I went into Roosevelt, and a fellow there cornered me, and he says, "Have you applied? Let's see, you applied for this and that, and let's check your military record and see what we can do for you." So I spent a half an hour with him, and he wanted to make sure I got all everything I was entitled to. I said, "Well, I was." He asked me if I was going to college. I said, "Well, I was, but the college has been started now for 3 weeks. Probably not advisable." He says, "Oh, go ahead." He says, "You can catch up." And that was on Saturday. So on And Sunday I caught the bus and rode up to Salt Lake and then down to Provo and moved in with Dean and Evelyn. And Rhea went around with me the next day and helped me register at school at BYU 3 weeks late, and I got a lot of poor marks, but I survived it. Anyway, that's kind of the whole trip in a nutshell. We weren't allowed to have cameras, although I have heard since that a few guys sneakily did have cameras and took a few pictures. Well, after the war was over, I bought a camera and I have a few pictures taken in Tokyo. Yeah, that about takes care of it, I think. You're wanting to know some of the tragedies of my life, I guess. When I was about 4 years old, we had free access to matches. And so Rhea and I went out and we decided we'd see if we could build a little fire somewhere. And we went around, tried some tumbleweeds, and they burned a few seeds and then quit. And then we went down behind the corrals and burned some Indian tobacco, and it would quit. And then I got up right back of this straw stack on the west side of the sheds. It wasn't a barn, it was an L-shaped shed. What they did, take cedar posts about 7 feet high above the ground and lay poles across, and then they put combination wire over the top of that and then blow straw over the top of that. You get about 2 or 3 feet of straw in that L shape. The L shape would break the wind, and the thickness of the straw would stop the rain. It did used to rain back in those days. Anyway, we were on one corner of that, and I built this little fire with some matches right to the bottom of that straw stack, and it was burning kind of nice. We had a fire there. The flames 2 or 3 inches high, and the next thing you know, I think a wind caught that, and it just whipped those flames into the bottom of that straw stack, and that was attached to the sheds with a stack of hay, also alfalfa hay. And boy, the minute that started to smoke, Maria and I began to run for our life for the house. And Dad was in the field, just Dad and Dean Niles to the east and south, or east of the house, our old log cabin. And they come running. But by then, that fire was clear to the top of the shed, clear to the top of the stack, 15 feet high. No way of putting it out. Dean rushed up to the canal a quarter mile away to steal somebody's water and bring it down there so they throw water on it. You know, it took half an hour to get that ditch of water down there. You got somebody's irrigation stream. So that whole thing burned. It burned up a bunch of chickens, a bunch of, I think it burned 2 calves to death. And then that's haystack that was basically the feed for our dairy cows for the winter. From that time on, my dad never hauled hay into the corrals for the winter. He'd leave it out in the fields and scattered around different straw stacks here and there, and so it became a winter chore to haul it in. Because
did you get a licking for that?
What?
Did you get a licking for that?
Can't hear you. Anyway, I was not Dad's favorite son from the rest of my life.
I'd like to know if y'all looking for that.
No, I thought I'd get beat to death, but I did not get a licking. But he did say, "If you ever build another one, I'll throw you in it." And I believed him. And
Oh, gee. I
know,
never had time to get into that kind of mischief.
anyway, that was one thing. And then, years later, I don't know, maybe that was earlier. Can't remember. That would be, in regards to this fire, I think the next year I was probably 4 years old, because the next year my mother tried to send me to school with Rhea so she wouldn't have to walk alone that 2 miles up the road to Bennett Schoolhouse. And when I got up there, and they found out I wasn't catching on, so they wouldn't let me go to school when I was 4 years old or 5, whatever it was. Anyway, Rhea was in the first grade. We didn't have kindergarten then, just 8 grades in 4 rooms. And so, yeah, I was going to tell you about another narrow escape I had. The 3 of us go around the house, and there was an old Monarch kitchen stove. You know, it had a warming oven on the side, and then the oven door. You pull the oven door down, and what would that be? 16 inches square, maybe 10 inches deep. And we wondered if we could get in there and shut the door. And Rhea tried it, and she couldn't. She's bigger than I was. And Marie tried it, and she couldn't. So I said, well, I think I can. So I got in and curled up tight as could be, and they shut the door. I said, now don't lock me in here. And they laughed, and away they went. Rhea cackled, and away she went. And they went around the house, and Dad was cultivating in the field, in the garden, just 50, 100 yards from the east side of the house. And Rhea and Marie went around the house, and I wasn't with them. And mothers are always nervous about where all their kids are all the time on a farm, because there's irrigation ditches around. So she says, Rhea, where's Acel? I don't know. And well, he was with you the last time I saw you. So she went up the south side of the house and came around the back. As they came to the back of the house on the east side there, Rhea said, oh, I remember, he's here in the oven. And they popped open that oven door, and I had turned black. I yelled, and I pushed on that oven door. You can't push it open. And nowadays they fix them so you can. That's the law. But anyway, I pumped, and Dad came rushing up out of the field and pumped me and got me breathing again. And anyway, why, they didn't get a licking for that either, I guess. But they used to be generous with lots of lickings in those days. That was a 2-room log house. The west end had a kitchen, heating room, couch combined, all in one, you know, with the cupboard on the north side, the sitting area on the west end, the telephone hung on the wall on the south side, with the window there between the phone and between the window and the door, and then the stove. I had a pot-bellied stove there, right on the division between the 2 rooms. And then in the other room it had 3 double beds. Mother and Dad slept in one bed, and at a time early, Dean and Niles slept there part of the time, I think. But when I was about 5 years old, I was still sleeping with Rhea and Marie, and Mother said that we were too old to be sleeping together. So Dean was sleeping with Niles out in the tent, summer and winter, out to the side of the house, out by the granary, about 50 yards from the house. I believe there is a picture of that tent somewhere. Anyway, they decided when Niles got married, that put a vacancy in the tent, so I could go out and sleep with Dean. And so that's where I slept from the time I was about 5 till, let's see, I think we moved to our new home, the Joe Price home that's still standing. The old log house is down and torn apart now. And I think I was probably a freshman in high school. So I slept in that tent summer and winter.
You ought to tell her about the winter temperatures out there.
What?
You ought to tell them about the winter temperatures out there.
Yeah,
in those days.
typical temperatures those days were 30 degrees below zero for at least a month of the winter, and mother had big camp quilts on that bed. Those quilts were so heavy you could hardly get in them. Made out of overalls and corduroys and heavy battings and whatnot. And the tent was boarded up about 18 inches around the outside, and the tent was tied down to it. Then the front, after you come in at night, well, you tie the flaps. So basically, the wind didn't blow in there, and it wasn't too bad. I don't think I wore a stocking cap for my bare head in there, but didn't need it then like I need it now. Anyway, yeah, that and sometimes those snowstorms would leave the snow probably 27 inches deep, and Dad had put 3 horses on a Fresno, a scraper that is, and scrape trails between the house and the corrals, so we could get around. I remember one time Dean or Niles was taking Ray and I to school, and we were a little reluctant to take the horse on our own in the 1st and 2nd grade, and then just tie the horse up all day and ride it home that night. So they put us on the sled behind the horse, lariat behind the horse, and they pulled us up the road with the horse running, as much as it could tolerate. And then, boy, I'll tell you, the time we got to school, we had some cold hands right next to frozen. Back in those days, they figured the best way to thaw out a frozen hand is to rub it in snow. And anybody stupid enough to believe that could go ahead and do it. But that's what they did. They rubbed our hands in snow until we yelled until they finally quit, and they started warming up. Told them they were okay. Anyway, yeah, back in those days, it used to rain quite a bit. They'd come home from the school and while we're down in the mud, somehow Rhea could get home with her shoes not too muddy. But by the time I got home, I had mud clear to my knees. I guess boys like to tramp through the mud. Anyway, well, let's see. My teacher was, B.T. Rice was the principal. Mrs. Berman was my 1st grade teacher, I think. Anyway, doesn't really matter, I guess.
Tell about meeting Mom.
Oh, when we met Mother. Yeah, when I got out of the service, Ray and Mark Bartlett, Ray Haslem, my best friend all through grade school and high school, they wanted to go on a date. And Ray was already married, and Mark Bartlett was already married. But we decided to go up to Uinta Canyon, and he said, well, get a date. And anyway, we decided that we'd go to a dance at Tridell. These little communities around White Rocks and Tridell and La Pointe and Bennett would take turns having a dance once a month, and we'd go to each other dances. Well, I went up to Tridell, and my brother Lynn introduced me to Oral. He was going off and on with Milda. He liked Milda, but he tried a lot of girls before he decided on a girl from southern Utah, down Blanding. Anyway, I needed a date, so Oral was convenient, and single and disengaged and all that.
Wait, you gotta tell about the cheek dancing though.
Anyway, the first dance, I danced with her. I danced a little close. The next thing you know, I noticed her cheek over against mine. I thought, hey, that's all right.
That's a big lie. If you want to be in this, you go sit my dad. Go sit my dad.
That is a big thing.
That's the first time I ever cheek danced with anybody.
Here,
And so
I cheek danced, but I didn't cheek dance with you.
Ray and Mark wanted to go dating. Then
I only cheek danced with people I didn't care about.
the next time they wanted to go dating the next few days, why, I thought, there's the girl to take, so I took Oral and asked her if she'd go with me to UNE Canyon.
Here, sit down so I can get your side of the story.
That's the biggest fib I ever heard of. I didn't cheat dance with anybody.
Anyway,
And certainly not
Well,
on
I
the
sure-
first date.
My
Maybe it was
brazen mother.
maybe it was a spiritual.
Get your imagination gone wild.
Well, you gotta remember, she's got a short memory.
Okay.
See how mean she is to me? Anyway, well, we went up to UNE Canyon and,
I'll have to tell the true story after he gets
All
done
right,
with
let's get his story.
and we kind of roamed around there after we'd done a little hiking up in the hills and whatnot.
Okay, go ahead and tell, back up and tell about when they were talking about when they got married, because I don't think we got that.
Yeah, well, I don't know if this ass was gonna act up and cut me off here.
Start with your
Anyway.
story of meeting Mom the first time.
Yeah, well, I guess we're back up with these two friends, wanted us to go double dating, and so, at the dance at Try to Help, my brother introduced me to Oral. I don't know, I must have danced with other girls, because I didn't go up there to dance, just one dance with one girl. Anyway,
There's my skinny mother.
so I asked her if she'd go with me to this trip up the canyon. And the girls brought some watermelon goodies to eat, and we did a little hiking around UNE Canyon, and then while they were laying there, oh yeah, I was going to tell you, and when I was dancing with her, I noticed her getting a little close, and I don't know whether she encouraged me or I encouraged her. Next thing you know, we were cheek dancing. She denies it. But
Here, wait.
You did
It's-
that in my life
it's
before,
Here, come in and sit down.
and I didn't do it that time.
Mother dear, come sit down.
I was thinking in a positive manner.
Mother dear, come sit down so you can, by Dad. Come sit by Dad.
I can't sit by people who tell that kind of fibs on tape.
Come sit down,
Oh, I'm
please.
trying to get some of this mess.
I'm trying to make
that's been
basic
bugging me.
history.
Mother dear, this is more important to you, Martha.
All right, I shall come, but not while this is full.
Oh, good grief. Okay, well, keep with your, you can't interject if you're not gonna sit down.
Well,
Anyway, I think
I'll
that's,
just have to put it in one big line.
Here,
Doesn't remember straight.
okay, so keep with the
Cheek dance.
brazen hussy story.
Cheek danced on my first date, hardy hard.
first dance was,
It wasn't even a date. Here, sit
Well-
down.
That makes it even worse.
I think she must have been very aggressive in her high school days. Anyway,
Mother dear, come
I
on.
enjoyed that
This
dance.
is for your missionaries.
So-
Sit down.
When they said,
Well, when they hear that kind of stuff,
They'll know where their mother gets it from.
yeah.
Have a seat. Wipe it on Dad.
when they said, let's go up the canyon for a date, why, I went. We went. I asked her and she said yes. And, her mother said something about she was all flustered about when I come to get her that day. I think we had my car, didn't
I
we?
think he has had a lot of nightmares in his life, especially since
Anyway,
the last 20 years.
Anyway, we had a good time on that date, but that's a slip of the tongue when they had been talking about when we got married and when we got married. Why came my turn to say something, and I said when we get married, and boy did they get a horse laugh out of that. My first date, and even she gave me the horse laugh.
But of course,
The duck.
naturally,
And
I only went out with you because you were Lynn's brother, and I liked Lynn.
she told me later something about a dumbest statement to make or something. Anyway, that must have been a gift of prophecy I had then. Anyway, we had a good time, and that was in the summertime, and And I don't, did I date you a few more times? Maybe a couple more times that summer. Mostly I was running my dad's farm equipment.
Oh, he'd ask me.
Mostly a combine.
He'd ask me for a date, and I'd get ready about 8 o'clock because the dance usually started about 8. And I'd wait, and I'd wait, and I'd wait until about time that I usually went to bed at 11 o'clock.
No, about 9 o'clock I'd show up. Anyway, about all you could do is take you in a movie.
Oh, we did go to movies.
I run the combine till dark. And I was working for my dad, donating my time for my dad. Running that combine, I had a lot better luck operating it than he did, because if I heard a different noise show up, I would investigate, see where that noise is coming from, and usually it was some kind of a part on the combine, the bolt was coming loose.
You don't have an appointment, Mother dear.
And so
Hold on.
I would find time to repair whatever was coming apart, and so I could go for days and days without repair. Dad'd get on that combine and have a breakdown nearly every day, because he didn't listen for those strange noises to tell you that something needed some attention. Anyway, so I'd combine till dark, from daylight to dark. I was doing custom work around it.
He asked me for a date, and I'd get ready about, dark, 9 o'clock, 9:30. And he'd come toddling in about 10:30.
I just wanted to see you.
Yeah.
To see if you was as beautiful as I was remembering.
Sure.
Okay, so when did you know you loved Mom, and then Mom, when did you know you loved Dad?
When
did you know you loved Mom?
Oh, when it came time to go back to school in the fall, well, I told him that I was going back to BYU, and she says that she went to BYU with a neighbor.
I did.
But I think I took her back to BYU.
You did not.
And,
you had a car, but you did not give me a ride, so I came toddling out here with the Hansons in the back of a
pickup truck. And then I found you and started dating you again.
I thought, what an ingrate that.
I think I already had a load. I had those
You
boys.
had all these clothes.
Those boys from Roosevelt.
That's no excuse.
Became attorneys.
No, we really didn't know each other that well.
What was their names? They eventually became an attorney for the state of Utah. And he was riding with me. I had a car full, I think. Anyway.
We had our first date in late July or August.
I think somewhere along there, you needed a ride back to Provo, and I offered you a ride, and as I was leaving, your mother said, "Take care of her for me, will you?" And I said yes, and I've been doing it ever since. And I didn't realize how much I had committed myself to. But it's been a good experience.
Oh, I'm glad.
And I think your mother is grateful.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
So wait, when did you know you love her, and tell me about proposing to her and stuff like that?
Well, I don't know. The more I thought about it, and I was marriageable age. I think I was 23 or 24.
He was old.
Yeah, well, I went in the Army at 19. I spent 29 months in the Army, 1 year at college before I proposed to her. I proposed to her at a Valentine's dance at the BYU ballroom in February in 1948, and we got married in the 30th of June, 1948.
So you got engaged on Valentine's Day?
Yeah. And
did you already have the ring?
yes, yeah, I had the ring. Actually, I think she knew it was coming, but we made it official at the. I don't think you were wearing the ring before that, were you? Anyway, why?
That detail, I've got all kinds of diaries, but I have no idea which one has what.
Then we got married in June of '48, and she had, Nadine was born in November 30th, 1949. We lived in Tuckerville, which those buildings been torn down. It's right across the road from the Manabu Church House on Sixth North and 6th North and what is that, 4th East? I think it's 6th North, 4th East. We lived there for a year until we had a chance to move over to FM Alders, and we lived there about.
Which was an oven.
Yeah, we was up on the.
There was no decent apartments. But,
Yeah.
but there were so many BYU kids and so little housing that anyone could rent any kind of rat hole they had. And that's what we kind of got into. At Tuckerville, there was one great big room with one window. That was what we initially decided to have for our bedroom, but that didn't work because.
Well, and then there was the kitchen on the south side of that, and then
it didn't have any windows.
And then on the east side of that was the bedroom.
No, it's not. No, it was further south.
A little south, and
a little south.
Yeah, there was a jut in the building that made it so that.
Well, he built on. He built a little slant roof and had another room here, another room there. Because then, there was an apartment shortage, and I didn't have a car. We didn't. You'd sold your car.
I didn't have a car at that point, did I?
And so we had to hoof it to BYU.
Let's see. I did. I don't think we had a car when we lived at Tuckerville.
All right, back up, Mom. Tell your side of the love story.
Well,
Do you dare deny that you did a cheap dance with me?
I only did that with people I didn't know if I liked yet.
What'd you do with people you did like?
I started pushing them back until I didn't know.
Sure.
I never cheat danced with anyone else. I don't think ever. And I don't think I cheat danced with you before either. I must have thought, well, this guy's a throwaway, so it's okay.
Practice on him.
I'd already thrown.
All right, so your side of the story. Stop dissing Dad. Let's get your side of the story.
Oh, well, you mean when I met him?
Yeah. The love story, the once upon a time.
Once upon a time. Well, I don't remember what we were going to do or what. I think he had a picnic figured out for 4th of July, was it?
Could have been.
And
4th of July.
And Lorene and Mark Mosman.
Lorene Mosman and Mark Bartlett, who were then married.
Was his age, and Lorene was my age in my class. And he had his cousin Ray. I don't remember who he took.
And Ray took Acel Oral.
I think that was our first date. Just going out.
That was our first date.
We took a picnic lunch and went up on the slopes where it was a little cooler and ate that. We didn't do anything. I don't remember what we could have talked about.
We ate.
Oh,
We did the fun things
I
we
think
ate.
we ate
Watermelon.
And I believe that there was
Cake
a sandy slope there. And we was having fun pushing each other down that sandy slope. Because I was so dirty when I got home that I had to wash my hair to go to church the next day. Or somewhere I had to go the next day.
So tell us about falling in love with him and your engagement night and stuff.
We didn't have an engagement night.
Engagement what?
He got around to kind of hinting around that maybe.
I found out if she's going to say.
Would you like to get married or something like that? But he didn't say, will you marry me,
Oh, yeah.
I said, sure, I'm going to get married someday. But,
But wait, he handed you a ring.
no, that was way later.
I had to find out if she's gonna turn me down before I come out and I'll ask her.
I said, my mom has 12 kids.
She's anxious to get rid of one.
And I enjoy those cute little kids. I don't know about when they got bigger. I could have beat that Elvin halfway out of his mind. He was such a brat. But I sure love the little ones. Anyway, I wanted to have children. And so we talked about that a little bit after he started asking nosy questions.
So wait, when did you first know you were in love with him?
You don't know that.
I don't know.
It just blends in a little bit each day. When you become aware they might be dating somebody else.
Well, we came out to BYU and we weren't engaged. And I dated other fellows. We both went to dances, different dances often. And so I dated other fellows a little bit. And it seemed like my drawback to him was that he had a car and I didn't. And so when I wanted to ride out to the basement for a longer weekend, it became convenient for me to ask if I could go with him. You know, and so did one thing and another thing. We got to dating around the streets, but most of the time, you sold that car, didn't you?
Yeah, I sold it to Norman Long.
Yeah, as soon as I got engaged to him, or interested in him, I sold the car, so we had to walk everywhere. And when I finally decided it was time to have a baby, we were up in Wyoming, and the theaters were down on the same place they are now. And so we had to walk down there. And, so one night, a couple of our friends, Margaret and Mac Adams, and she was about 4 months more pregnant than I was. And they'd sold their old rattle trap. And Ken and Marilyn Birmingham, I don't know how I happened to get going with them. They were in mine out too, weren't they?
Well, they were good friends with Mac and Margaret. Mac and Margaret lived in the basement right under our apartment
Oh, yeah, I guess
in Tuckerville.
That's right. Yeah, we kind of got to all going around together.
Then Wendell and Verna, Bunnell. I don't remember how we got started going with them. I guess
She was my roommate.
Oh,
Anyway, we
had a
usually
foursome.
we had a foursome that we'd go to movies with now and then, and go have get extravagant and have a hamburger once in a while, and you know.
We went to China City Cafe once for an elegant lunch, and when we came out of there, we were wondering where we could go to get a good hamburger.
I mean, that was really expensive. It
Yeah.
probably cost us $3 a piece, you know. And we were living on his GI, which was $90.
$90 a month. Well, until I got on Public Law 16, since I was a disabled veteran, why, they gave me an extra $17 a month, wasn't it?
And I was working at Walgreens, I think. Did I quit that job after we were married? I hated it.
Yeah, I'm sure you did. Yeah, because we lived in Wymount, you didn't walk from Wymount. Yeah. Yeah, we had $117 a month to live on, and our rent payment at Wymount was what, 60 or 40?
I don't remember. It was a lot better than down at Tuckerville.
I think it was
I think
60.
it was 50 at Tucker's.
There's better
I
accommodations
think it was less.
and less money.
So we moved up there. It was noisy up there, and people, you know, they had two levels. People above us had a bunch of kids, so it was bang, 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 bang all over there. And then we had a couple next door to us that had children. And then Wes Berry and his wife lived on the other side.
On the west side of us,
And while we were there, Nadine was born, and their bedroom and our barracks were not insulated or,
In the old army barracks, they were drug in, about 17 of those buildings, where the law building is now, and the big parking lot at BYU.
anyway, I felt bad for them because she was a colicky little thing. She'd squat half the night, and their bedroom wall was about cardboard thin, and they were trying to sleep on the other side. And,
Yeah, she cried for the first year of her life, didn't she?
oh my gosh, she was a stony,
She had
achy little tykey. She was our littlest baby. The others
colicky.
didn't have any real problems.
And our other friends had babies that just sleep right through the night, and they just couldn't understand why we had so many problems. Her mother came out and stayed with us a bit, trying to help Nadine through something, and it didn't work. Anyway, we were there till I graduated from college, and then we were required to move out, and Laura wanted to go home to the basin to visit her mother again, because she liked to go out there about once a month, even if she didn't want to go out there every 2 months.
No, I've been around babies all my life because I even remember when Doug was a baby. He was about number 7 or 8. And anyway, I'd been around babies. I knew how to handle babies, but I didn't know how to handle Nadine because she would cry and fuss and cry. Finally, someone said, well, maybe, the doctor said, maybe your breast milk doesn't agree with her. Take her off for a couple of days and put her on a formula and see if that works. Well, with the stress of the whole thing and the fact that I was up so much at night with her, time that couple of days was gone, there was nothing left to go back to. And so it was another about 8 or 9 months of just all night panic, all day.
Tummy aches.
I was so tired, and she was so cross, and the poor old thing was just loaded with gas and tummy aches. We finally got some tips from someone that when they had a little child, a baby had tummy aches, it was probably just that they were allergic to milk or didn't agree with them. And so they suggested that we warm her tummy with a hot pad. And that was a hazard because when we got her settled down with the hot pad on under her tummy, I had turned that off. So I couldn't leave it on. She was still in the bassinet. She didn't have any place to go. And oh boy, we had such a time with her.
It's a wonder we had any more children. She gave us so much heck that first year. Well, even after we left Wymount and moved out to Orem, bought a home, and we lived in down here in what's his name, Gerald Pine's basement on 2nd North.
And that was the worst place we could have gone with her when she had tummy ache problems because there's only 2 heat vents in the whole apartment. One was right over our face in the bedroom, the only bedroom, and the other one was in the kitchen. And the heat doesn't go down; it goes up. And so it was cold down there. And oh boy, did we have a time with her.
So then eventually, we heard about these homes in West Beverly, 476 North, 9th West. And we went over there and found this, practically one of 2 homes and 3 homes that face west. Yeah, our house payment was $64 a month. Yeah.
But it wasn't what you call a home like we live in now, because, like Dad said, it was just a floor furnace. And if you closed the door, that room got icy cold in the winter. And because the furnace was geared to what was in the hall.
You're talking about West Beverly?
Yeah.
Yeah, a double wall floor furnace. It's like if there was a furnace outlet right there, heat come out this way and would go in the bedroom the other way. And you regulate it by hand.
And that was the only heat we had in close the door to try to get it quiet so she could sleep, it'd get, in just no time at all, it would get so cold that she'd just wake up screaming with a stomachache. We had trouble with her. But she was such a darling baby. She was our prettiest baby.
Excuse me?
When she was little, she was really cute. Well, you were too.
Yeah.
And by then we weren't nervous about having a baby. We could take it anywhere, do anything. You never screamed with a stomachache. You and Garth were like icing on a sour cake. Anne was okay. She was really good too. So, and Marilyn had a little colic, but not very much.
Garth stood on his head in your pelvis and gave you a big varicosities.
Yeah, my baby started to really go crazy when he was so big. And I was being careful because the doctor said, hey, it's not easy to deliver a great big baby. And I thought, well, if it's worse than the little one, I better be careful. So I did. But he was still 9 pounds and 6 ounces. So, yeah, I think he was our biggest one.
Yeah, imagine that. Of course, the bigger babies are easier to raise. Anyway, when Nadine was approaching 6 years old, she had this asthma. Was it asthma or was it?
It was asthma.
Asthma, I think they
She just
call
coughed
it.
all night.
They just cough all night with asthma. And, well, we got hit with something.
All these kids.
No, well, that's little kids playing. I saw his head. Anyway, my Dr. Cranny said, hey, we've had a little bit of success. I heard that somebody took a shot of a certain chemical and it kind of cured their asthma. Would you be interested in trying that? I said, we certainly would. And so she got a shot.
It wasn't chemical, so it was.
Well, it was a shot. Take a shot.
I'll think of it. Anyway, they give it to people
With bad asthma.
bad asthma.
It
It wasn't developed for asthma. That was just.
It was a derivative of blood, as I recall.
Oh
And
yeah.
I can't think what it was. Anyway, why it practically cured her. We'd had her in the hospital twice with that save her life, and practically cured her. And we were out to the Uinta Basin one time, and she came down with making a lot of racket during the night. And we jumped up at night, and she was having a seizure in Grandma's house, and they're probably throwing their dinosaurs against the door. Anyway, we took her to Salt Lake after that to have her tested for seizures and whatnot, and told the first grade teacher in case she has one what to expect. But I don't think she ever had another one. Anyway, we did have that experience. She had something that brought on a seizure. Anyway, let's see.
I see what she's.
I'm gonna pause this for 1 second.
Is it okay? Pretty good if you're sweet.
Yeah.
Okay, Mother dear, for Gordon and Devon's Christmas present, we want to get your testimony on tape. So speak up.
Difficult to do.
Imagine you're at church. Just say your testimony to your grandkids.
Well, I don't know when I first knew it. I guess when Grandpa Rasmussen was alive, we'd go up to Grandma's and Grandpa's for Sunday dinners almost every week, and among the holidays. And they were poor, you know. they didn't have very much money, and Grandma did all the work to provide chickens and eggs and stuff like that. Anyway, we'd go up there for holidays and for birthdays sometimes. And Grandpa Rasmussen had served a mission. He wasn't a good provider, but he was surely a stalwart in the church. There was about 3 or 4 older men that when it was fast days and testimony days, most people just sat there, plunked. And there was only half a dozen that would, at the most, that would get up and bear their testimony. And they didn't walk up to the standing because it was such a small crowd that they just stand where they were. And there was my Grandpa Rasmussen and Mr. Thompson, and he didn't have a testimony. He just ended there and yak about anything but a testimony. And sometimes he'd even go into, something he'd read in a magazine that was contrary to the church. And he'd tell all about that. And it's not the kind of testimony meetings by any means that we share now. And there were a lot of people like my daddy who was so shy that he very rare. I knew he had a testimony because he had us do family prayer night and morning. He taught us to say he and Mom taught us to say our own prayers when we went to bed. And, he did all the right things, but he was so quiet. Only once or twice I saw him hear his testimony, and his chin would quiver like it does at home, and like it did at home when he was talking about sacred things. And I knew by the way he lived and Mom lived, that they both knew that this church was the right one, because they insisted whether there was irrigations that Dad had to tend to and couldn't go, or 2 or 3 babies in the house that were too noisy to take to church. And of course there were no cars, we walked. And it was not that far, but it was if you had a baby 2 and a half and another one in your arms. Anyway, they would get us ready whether they went or not, and I think it was Grandpa Rasmussen that his testimony touched me, and I felt good about the church anyway. But when he said the church was true, I believed it was, and that was just the initial beginning, and so I did a lot of reading around the house. They always had the ensign and the children's friend, and I'd read through that, and if I found an article I really liked, I'd star it. And then when I graduated from high school, I got flyers from the universities. I had a pretty good GPA in spite of the fact that I never studied because I didn't have time. We were washing dishes till the dead of night, it seemed like, and doing
Scrubbing eggs.
and sanding and cleaning eggs. And we did that with a little brush because if you put them in water, it kind of makes them go bad. And so we had these big baskets, yay tall and so big around, with eggs to brush each night.
From 300 chickens.
500.
500 chickens.
And there was always a ton of dishes with the big family we had, and then the separator that separated the cream from the milk was way worse than washing dishes. Way worse. Great. There's a set of discs in about this high, and they were no bigger than a pie tin, no thicker, and it separated the cream from the milk. I don't know how that worked, but
You spin it.
anyway,
Cream comes up and the milk goes down.
yeah. There was, I would rather do 2 batches of dishes anytime than wash that separator.
For 10 kids.
So if Gordon and Devin were standing right here, what would you want them to know your testimony of the gospel is, though?
Well, when my grandpa Rasmussen stood up in church and said, I know this church is true. I have a testimony that burns within my soul. Anyway, I'd heard him talk about the church many times when we were up to Grandma's because she always invited the whole family. You know, I mean, she had 12 kids, and there must have been 24 of us grandkids there every Sunday. Almost every Sunday, they would invite us up for dinner. Of course, Mom was not a leech. She always took a great big pan of potatoes, and she would take jellies and jams and vegetables and, you know, lots of the things that they didn't have, because Grandpa Rasmussen was not a gardener.
Didn't they give gratitude to the Savior quite a bit in those days?
Oh, absolutely.
You haven't mentioned that.
Tell Gordon and Devin how you feel about the Savior and the restoration of the church. I mean, you, not your grandpa. How do you feel about it?
That's what I'm getting at.
Okay.
Grandpa Rasmussen would stand up in testimony meetings and he'd talk
You're
about it.
repeating.
And then when we were up to his house, he would insist that no one, even the little hungers that were starving to death, eat until we had the blessing on the food. And it wasn't just a brief blessing always like we'd have. He would give thanks, real thanks for the things that they had, because they were few. But when I'd hear him bear his testimony, and I knew he meant it, it meant something to me. I felt the spirit of what he was doing and saying, and I knew the way he lived, and I guess that was the beginning. I just believed my grandpa, and I believed Mom and Dad. We always, before breakfast, we always had a kneel down prayer, and then included the blessing on the food. And in the evening, before we went to bed, sometimes we'd have the family prayer again. Sometimes, if we were in different times of the night and kids on different levels of bedtime, why Mom would come with us to hear our prayers. And it just became a habit.
We never had family prayer when I was growing up.
And I knew from all those experiences.
Why don't you tell about your feelings while we were in Israel, visiting sacred places?
Or on your mission. Or while your kids are or your grandkids are on the mission.
Well, I'm thrilled. I can't talk with that. Anyway, I am thrilled when my kids go on missions, because there's something about mission that cements your knowledge. It's not just faith, it's knowledge. You know that. I know that. But sometimes kids don't know that, even though they go to church steadily. And that, to me, the Savior is as real as you are sitting there. I know that He hears our prayers for our kids and for our grandkids. I know He blesses them. I know He inspires them to go out on missions and do His work. I know He lives as much as when He was here in His physical body. I know that there have been times when, in the last few years,
that had I not had a blessing from Dad and some of the other elders of the church, that I wouldn't have made it. And that maybe wouldn't have been a big tragedy as far as, because death isn't something I fear. It's just I don't want to leave my family yet. And I think that when we finally do die, it'll be wonderful because there's so many people that I love, you know, but I'm still not ready to leave my family yet. And so that's, I know just as surely as I know that you're sitting there, that our Savior lives, sees us, knows what we do, and He will be our judge. It's not Heavenly Father who's going to judge us, it's Jesus Christ. And I don't want to go before Him with all these offensive things that I've done. And I'm sure I still do offensive things that I would be ashamed to have Him see. But I'm trying to get past all that so that when I meet Him, and I will, He can say, well done. And that's what I hope.
Why don't you talk about Israel while you get a hold of yourself?
Well, Israel's a fantastic place because we went, our first thing when we got there was stopping at a motel that was right close to the Sea of Galilee. And we walked from here to into the street, and we were at the level of the sea. And it's a beautiful, clean looking up there. It was just so clean. I wish you didn't have a camera on that.
No, that was Mediterranean Sea.
Yeah.
That was Mediterranean.
Well, okay, was it Mediterranean or
Yeah.
no? It was Galilee.
That first night was the Mediterranean Sea, and we moved on up to Jerusalem. Later on,
No,
went to
that was the Sea of Galilee.
No,
Because He said this isn't nearly as big as the Mediterranean. It wasn't. You could see the shores all the way around it. And my sisters and I, we went.
Okay.
I think maybe I'm off on a limb going through all my life history here. But born in Devon, you know, after we had the privilege of serving a mission, and ours was only a year, and of course we missed our families, and so it was a little hard to be away. You know that now, don't you? And anyway.
We're proud of our missionaries, and we got 4 of them, 4 clouds.
By Christmas, you'll only have my 2.
I know how much serving a mission can enlarge your testimony and bring you closer to your Savior. And so we are so happy that you boys are taking that opportunity. Of course, we only were out a year, and you're going to be there 2 years. And time you have served a mission, if you are faithful in your service, that mission will direct your life. And I know that you're both faithful.
Change your life for good.
It does.
Not that you weren't good before, but
it cements within your heart and in your mind what your Heavenly Father has done for you, and it will do for you, and is doing for you. Because as you serve Heavenly Father, you know that pleases Him if you're working in His service, and He pours out His blessings. And there's some, I think it's in the Doctrine and Covenants that says that you may not be able to, how is it that's worded? I can't think of it right this moment.
That was a proof line.
Yeah, it was.
How great will be your joy with them in the kingdom of your Father.
Yes, if you've helped one soul to come back into his presence, and if there are many, you can kind of think how joyous it will be to meet with them and with our Savior when you get there. Now that's a long ways away, hopefully for all of us, but especially for you young folks. And that's not all. It will influence the way you raise your families, the way you teach your families, and it will be a 99% factor in whether or not they return to Heavenly Father. And I know that this church is true as much as I know I'm alive and speaking. And when you know that, you know, there's no fear of dying because you're going to meet your Savior. And I can't think of anything to be lovelier than that unless you have a ton of stuff to repent of. So being a missionary is a wonderful, wonderful opportunity, because not only do you have to have a testimony to teach people, but it strengthens your testimony to teach people. And so enjoy this 2 years. It's a time when you don't have to worry too much about going out and earning money, and you can just devote your whole life to the service of our Savior.
Yes.
And Lord.
Trying to help other people.
And that is probably the best service, except for teaching your own family, that you'll ever give. We're proud of you. And we pray for you morning and night, every day.
Every day, twice a day. Yep.
And so we hope everything is going very well with you. And I just can't imagine myself learning some of those difficult languages. But obviously you have the brains to do it. So onward, upward. Never forget how much we love you. And I know that the Savior has the capacity for far more love than we have.
Anything else, Dad?
That I've already borne my testimony on it.
Yep.
Yeah, anyway. All's well. We try to survive day by day. Life does have its challenges, but the Lord has been very kind to us. And
I'll say the biggest blessing we have
is our family.
Is our family.
And we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
We love you.